I remember people were loving the food, and I just remember a gentleman coming up to me and saying, "Hey, we love your food, awesome, but good luck." It's like, he goes, all the restaurants here have failed.
Oh. How do you take one restaurant concept and over 4 years turn into 6 restaurant concepts worth $40 million a year? Well, that's exactly what Chef Ponte does, and he was nice enough to sit down with me and go over his secrets of how he's led his company from one location to a $40 million a year business. 3 simple things that he focuses on, and the third one you're absolutely not gonna believe, but check it out.
Kind of starting out as a kid, I started out in the restaurant business as a busboy. Just kind of fell in love with that high energy, high pace. I found out quickly the more I hustled, the more money I would make, and I loved doing that. And it was just like, I always built in my head, like, how many tables can I clear? How quickly can I do it? You know, how can I streamline it? I was always kind of having that mind and just being efficient and doing that through high school. And then, you know, I came to a point where, you know, I was in the kitchen with my mother and grandmother and stuff, really enjoyed cooking and stuff like that. And she was like, "Hey, why don't you go to culinary school?" And I didn't really think that. I was like, "Oh yeah, that is a job."
What were you good at cooking with your, before you started?
Just like compotes. I remember me and my sister would always get some raspberries and blueberries and go out, pick them, and come home. And I used to make, you've got 1 or 2 good dishes that you usually kind of lean on. So those were kind of the ones me and my sister used to always make compotes with the berries and stuff. That's like so that. Cool, serve it over ice cream, and just kind of love that. And you know, as a kid going out partying, coming home late at night, you kind of want to eat. You kind of throwing these things together, and just kind of fell in love with it. Knew
some crazy mac and cheese or something.
Yeah, exactly. Something quick and easy. Obviously leave the kitchen a mess and my mother screaming at me the next day. But
it was worth it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. From there, finished Johnson and Wales, and knew that the area was, a gorgeous area. I think it was really kind of untapped, just had beaches, and Tampa was great, and St. Petersburg was amazing. And I was like, man, I could definitely settle here. And I had the opportunity with a gentleman that came into my restaurant, went to Paris, and my dream was to open something that I could bring back to show this market here and what I've learned and what I've accumulated over the years, and bring it to them and give that to them, people here, and kind of give them that kind of experience of that French and, Italian cuisine. So that was kind of where it all started.
What do you think like a pivotal moment was for you?
I'll say like opening my first restaurant. I mean, it wasn't in the best location, but when you have a dream, you kind of, vision is a little blurred and stuff. If it wasn't for my parents saying, "Hey, you got this, do it," the support from them, I don't know if I would have chickened out or not, because you're taking on so much as the owner and everything. I remember people were loving the food, and I just remember a gentleman coming up to me and saying, "Hey, we love your food, awesome, but good luck." It's like, he goes, all the restaurants here have failed. Oh. So I was like, I'm like, are you kidding? Like, I talked to my dad. He's like, don't worry, do what you do and continue to do it. Through that, I just kind of got my business sense and developed my skill set a little bit more, and just kind of developed a great following in the Clearwater area, and bought a 150-seat restaurant and started there, and, really kind of made a name for that side of the bay for myself, and just developed that. And then we ended up closing it during COVID and just before COVID. But, I had already put a lease on Ponte Modern American, and I was kind of torn between doing the both. So I was like, should I let it go or should I not? And then COVID hit, and I was like, okay, this has to be a sign. So I would rather have, after 18 years, close something that has good memories and all of that kind of stuff, not have to be the restaurant. Well, it used to be good. So it was kind of like a good decision. It was tough. It's like, but I felt like I went out on top. And the amazing thing is that you don't realize when you're in the restaurant business how you touch people. Like, that was like going to culinary school. I knew, like, you want to give to people and you want to have people have amazing experiences, but you just don't know, like, the letters that came in. And people were telling me my father had his last meal there. We celebrated my kid's birthday and, anniversaries. And I couldn't believe, like, how much, people were upset and sad that it was closed. I mean, it was the chapter. Yeah. And it was the letters that came in after were just amazing. That was something that was shocking to me.
Right. You can only get that by closing the restaurant.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm curious, just going back a little bit, you went to Paris to really cut your teeth after culinary school, and then you ended up working at a 3-star Michelin restaurant in Paris, which I'm sure it's like working with a bunch of guys who don't speak any English, don't speak French. Yeah. And then you have to work your way. Can you just tell me about that journey one more time?
Yeah, sure. So, after I finished at Cordon Bleu, I was able to get into Taivon, which was 3 3-star Michelin, and I had worked with one of the chef's teachers there and did some catering with him, and he always told me, hey, you help me out, I know the chef at Tyvone, I'll get you your apprentice or your stage there. I was like, absolutely. And nobody had ever gotten a stage there from the school, so I was like, absolutely, whatever it takes. So we got in there, started out in pastries, and I noticed they wouldn't let you touch anything. They were, hey, just stand there and stuff. And I noticed that the pots and pans were overflowing, and I started washing the pots and pans. They're like, no. But I was like, I insisted. So, keep the flow of things going. I knew what it took to get, what they needed, and kind of being their go person. Hey, whatever you need, and just kind of got their belief that, I'm not here. I'm here to work, and I'll do whatever it takes to get into it. And then, I noticed that they were starting to help let me plate dishes and started really being a part of the team. I closed, washed windows, swept the floors, did whatever, and that was in pastries. And then I remember I was going to cuisine after that next, and I remember I knew enough French to know like kind of what he said, but one of the chefs, like, the American, what's he like? And I could tell the pastry chef goes, yeah, he can do it. And then he comes to me and goes, wait till you come to cuisine, we'll see. Like, I'm like, oh, great. So anyway, so I just remember first day, they put like 8 boxes of mushrooms in front of me, and it was just like my thumbs were killing me at the end of the day, but I just kept my head down. They're testing you.
Right.
They want to see what you're made of, and I just kept my head down and just plowed through it and just kept working and just started working. The same kind of mentality I had with the pastries, just work hard and make their lives easier, and they're going to like you. And then all of a sudden, just started working alongside, doing what they were doing and everything that they were doing, and cleaning and finishing the night strong with them. And then I was on the line cooking with them and learning everything. And a funny story is that the sous chef there, they had probably 4 sous chefs. It was 60-seat restaurants. There had to have been 25 chefs. It was ridiculous. It's still there. I would ask him different questions, hey, how do you do this, in the best French that I could, and he would explain it in French to me, and I would try to get as much as it was. And then after about a year and a half, I told him, hey, this is my last week here, it was great working with you. And he spoke perfect English to me. So I was like, are you kidding me? And I just laughed, because he's like, well, when you're in France, you speak French. I go, you're right, touche. That's
awesome.
I thought it was great that he never broke once.
That's crazy.
I know, it was unbelievable.
And he knew he
I was
wanted
like,
to.
yeah, I
times.
know. He probably wanted to explain it a little better to me, but
yeah.
I thought that was hilarious.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But he was probably waiting for that reveal.
Yeah, I was like, oh. But
crazy.
good on him, man.
Yeah.
He has his standards, and standards is standard,
For sure. First of all, I love your story, because you're telling me basically you used hard work.
Yeah.
And a desire to always get better.
Yeah.
Combination of those two to kind of like
Yeah.
to forge your path.
Exactly.
So path was not given to you.
No.
You forged your path. And that's what makes your path
Yeah.
unique.
Yeah.
You used hard work, and then you used dedication to
Yeah.
get better. And then you opened your own restaurant. If I understand it right, you were like using some free labor to kind of like leverage to get
Sure.
to your next spot.
Absolutely.
Right? So
I knew if you had to work with the best, and ended up coming to New York and working with Daniel Boulou there, and doing that as well, and doing a stage with him and working for him. Did that about a year and a half while I was working another job as a personal chef for somebody. So it was getting the education and still being able to afford to be there. So got the opportunity to work with Danielle, which was a huge honor. He's one of the best French chefs in the country.
You're a big vision person.
Yeah.
Right? Big picture, big
Yeah.
vision person.
Yeah.
I think that's a big attribute to your success, because you're going here, working at these places for free, and you're not like, not once you worried about money. Like,
Yeah.
Probably
No,
one time
exactly.
you're like, I just want to get from here to A to B. Like, this is immensely more valuable. It's like investing in Apple,
Exactly.
right? Like in 1980 versus like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
I'd rather
yeah,
have the
yeah,
I'd rather
wait,
have the
yeah,
$500
yeah, exactly.
in my pocket.
Not
right?
seeing the big picture.
Right.
Exactly.
Like, just put this $500 in here. Don't worry about the money, and just let it ride.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I think, you've done. Like, you just like
Yeah,
invest in yourself,
yeah.
invest in
I
yourself.
was so passionate about it, and that's the problem. I think that a lot of people, talented people, is they don't understand the value like that they have. They underestimate what they have because they love it so much that it's so easy to them. Not easy, but it comes natural to them. They don't understand the value. And I tell chefs when they're going out consulting for people, I say, remember your intellectual property, that's yours. You worked hard for that. So just don't give it away for free, but in a consulting way, you know, like I
Right.
remember I was doing consulting gig and, you know, I was like, how do I value what I know?
So
You know,
hard.
like, you know, you could have, you know, I explained to them, I said, you know, I want this much money. And they were, well, why? And I said, well, whatever I create for you is now yours, but that could be the next blooming onion, or, you know, it could be in a dish that could make you millions. So how do you do that? You
Right.
know?
Yeah, that's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So I always
agree.
try to educate my guys when if they're doing something or moving on, you know, I try to give them the best advice that I can. We all want to learn. We're all creatures of wanting to learn. And it's always great to hear things that I've learned from you today as well. And, you know, it's great. I mean, you can never learn enough. And you know what? I'm a firm believer in teaching and training and educating our staff and the people that work for us. Tons of emails and texts saying how great it was and how energized they feel. And it's just like, you know, sometimes it's nice to just take a step back, re-energize yourself. And I think that's exactly what you did for us here today. And we really appreciate it.
I love it.
And I'd love
Thank
to
you.
book it again next year.
I love it. I'm going to be here. I'm
Awesome,
going
man.
to block off the calendar.
All right.
Because I always tell people too, you know, with stuff like with your brand, they're always saying like, what could you offer? Like Ponte has it all together. Olivia has it all together. And sometimes I just tell them it's going from like great to greatness.
Yeah.
Right. It's like that 1% taking
Yeah,
that next
exactly.
level.
Just every day be better. That's what we say in the kitchen. Just try to be better. One little bit more. Learn something. Like, you know, educate your staff. I try to get the leaders talk about something. There's a lot of people that don't know about this aged, how long it's aged, and there's all that information out there. Let's share it amongst ourselves so we all can be better. And there's young kids here that want to learn, and it's I tell my chefs and my sous chefs, you guys are teachers, man. You got to teach. It's not just educate them, make them take your job.
Yeah.
You know, grow them.
For sure.
And then you can grow to the next job.
Exactly. Yeah, because you have a reliable, trusted person there for you.
People want to work for people that want to teach them and educate them.
Yeah, 100%. What was your strategy on the menu? Like, what did you think was like, here's how I'm going to be successful?
Yeah,
you knew it lied in the menu.
Yeah, so, you know, I wrote the menu and, you know, I had coming from New York, coming from Paris, and I'm really going to show what I know. And, you know, you're coming to a town that is not a big city. We're not, you know, doing that. And I learned quickly, you know, like, okay, I have to pivot because I didn't want to have to do sandwiches on the menu for lunch, but I had to pivot in order to get that lunch crowd in and get them in quick and get them out. So I couldn't do the fine dining stuff as much. So during lunch, it would be a lot more casual, fast paced, you know, get them in and out. And then at dinner, the menu would almost flip to a whole new dinner menu where it was more composed plates and elegant and, you know, all of that. So, you know, I learned quickly as a business, like I got to turn tables here to make money. And at night I can do what I want to do, you know, for myself and to show them what I like. And you have to pare it down and make it a little more simple and then let them trust you, take them on the journey with you. You know, like you were saying earlier, once you trust somebody, that's it, you trust them. So you built the trust with the guests and then start to do things that were a little more crazy or chef driven or passionate projects on the plate. It was funny because I was trying to identify who I was. How do you do that? Like, who am I and what dishes am I doing? And I just always thought, I always loved all kinds of food. So we were kind of a type of restaurant. I knew I had the French background skill and the Italian side. So it was kind of like a French, Italian, and Asian. It was kind of a mix of food, you know, but I always kept everything, try to do the bouillabaisse, the 100% bouillabaisse. I didn't do infusion. I always kept everything like, you know, infusion was at that time was really popular, but I just felt like I wanted to show them the bouillabaisse that I had in Joan Le Pen at Tattoo, you know, and give them that. This is what I had there. And they loved the bouillabaisse. And the same thing with different dishes. You're taking everything of your journey of life, putting it on a plate. It's only what I know and what I've seen, you know. So, you know, and took all the bits of things that I had learned and chefs had taught me and kind of doing it in my way and showing it the way that I like to show it.
Introducing people to new things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
People don't know about that dish,
exactly.
how awesome it is.
Yeah.
But a part of that's because it's not mainstream, so people are afraid to put it on the menu.
Yeah.
Part of it's because it's not easy to make.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
it's a 3-day process.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So so your whole menu concept is basically like your journey.
Yeah.
Like, this is telling you about what I've been through.
What I've done. Yeah, and I think that's the case for most chefs. You know,
I just feel like I could be completely wrong, but like sometimes chefs suffer from trying to get too creative.
Yeah.
And then chefs suffer from trying to deliver what they think people want versus what, like you said, like here's my story.
And I think in that being successful as a businessman, that's, you're doing chef business, you got a creative mind, then you have to have a disciplined mind. And that's, hard to come by. But when you can't pay the bills, then you get real quick with it.
Business,
So,
yeah.
I tell chefs, if they're gonna, go off and everything, I say, know your market. You have to know what your market bears. That's the first thing I assess. What's the price point? What kind of palate does this area have? And what is it? You have to cook to that. I mean, you gotta win them first. I think you gotta cook to that, because you're cooking as a chef for a guest. You're not cooking for yourself. Yeah, partially it is for me. It's a reward, but I need to make sure I'm cooking what the guest in the area where I'm cooking in enjoys that type of food. And the price points being that same thing, because people can't afford it. If you can't afford it, then they're not going to show up. So, I feel like I didn't want to I call them chefy chefs. Like they're going to do like pig heart, tartare, and just some crazy things. But I kind of wanted to appeal to the masser market. I think, carve out a niche that, I can be proud of what I'm doing, but the people will understand it and also love it. And I just don't put things on my menu where if I can't pronounce it, then how the hell is my guest going to pronounce it? So I always kind of dumbed it down and just kept it simple, but wowed them with presentations, and show them on the plate. Don't show them on the menu, because I think sometimes you hype it up so much that when it comes, they're kind of let down, where
for sure,
if you keep it simple and it comes out.
Simple, relatable.
Yeah, exactly.
I couldn't agree more. It's like, think about your geographical area and then think about the people and what they want. And I think I was talking to someone else about this, but I worked in Laguna Beach for a long time, and so many restaurants would try and do a copy and paste.
Sure.
There was like Tortilla Republic, they're in West LA. They tried to copy and paste, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Katsuya, wildly successful sushi place in LA, tried to copy and paste, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Rock and Fish, tried to copy and paste, didn't work. You just can't. You have to be aware of what the locals want.
Exactly.
And price point is important. And like Tortilla Republic, simple things like they were like, we charge for our chips and salsa.
Yeah.
It's like that was a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And they try to fight it.
Yeah.
We're gonna try, and then all of a sudden, a year later, they're drowning, and they're like, "Hey, chips are
free. Chips are free. Yeah,
they're free." And
exactly.
it's like, why?
Yeah,
why do we have to go
exactly.
through this down? We could just solve the problem ahead of time and listen to the people. You're here to serve, right? You're here to serve the people and give them delicious food, and hopefully give them something they haven't had before on that journey.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
At that point, maybe it's an appetizer.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe it's a dessert.
Exactly. I mean, it's just I think food and smells of food. I mean, it just instantly brings you to a certain place. Like as a kid, are amazing what the senses will do to your brain. When you smell something, you remember. I mean, when we cook stocks, it always brings me back to one of my first restaurants I worked in. I walk up to the back door, going into the kitchen. I remember on every Saturday, I could smell the broth, the beef stock on the thing. And then when we make it here, it's like I remember walking through that door. It's crazy. Yeah, it's awesome.
Crazy. Ponte is amazing. Like it's just I ate here.
Thank you.
No, seriously, absolutely killed it. And that was one thing I really liked about it, was obviously the design is beautiful, but the menu is so elevated and relatable at the same time.
Yeah,
and I think that's such a rarity.
Well, I'm glad that's what we're trying to achieve. Like
nailed it. Like
just kind of take some of those things and have some fun with the classic steakhouse. That's what I tell the chefs, like, let's just do things really, really well. Do it simple and just deliver a great product. You don't have to be too crazy with it.
Right.
And you can do that certain wine dinners and have the fun there and kind of experiment there, and let's see what they say, and try it out there. And if they like it, we can always bring it to the menu. I'm glad you saw it for what it is.
For sure, 100%. And there's just a lot of exciting dishes I saw in there where I wanted to try them all.
Yeah.
Even your composed dishes, I was like, man, these look really good. Steaks obviously look amazing.
Yeah.
And the price point's not crazy.
Yeah, we try, in all of our concepts, like I want people to feel that they left and say that was a value. Like, that was, if you can send people away saying it's a value, then, you've won, I think, because, people will come in, the first thing they do, when they come in the first time, they're looking at price points. They're looking at, can I afford this next time, and how much this is, and then the overall experience of service and food execution and how the ambience feels. That's the first thing. Why do you go in for the juggalo? Our wines are priced very, very reasonable. I mean, bottle of wine sitting on my rack is not doing me any good. Like, let's share the profit
Yeah.
with them. Let's just keep the prices where it makes them feel good, and it helps us fill the restaurant.
100%. Instead of like, let's
Yeah.
match the competition's
Yeah, yeah.
price.
Let's just go for the big end prices, and because they gotta pay for it.
Right.
And I don't want that. I
That's
don't
what our
want people
competitors
to
are
feel,
charging.
yeah, I don't want my customers ever to feel uncomfortable in any of my
Right.
restaurants.
Or that, like, you want to see them go, because that's what
Yeah.
I saw your menu, and it's like not obviously inexpensive, but I
Yeah,
looked at it and
but
go,
yeah,
this
I
is
mean, it's
very
very
reasonable.
reasonable for
Yeah,
even this market is very reasonable. And
for
also
sure.
we have the Gramercy bar that we developed, and that it's a different menu. You can get a steak and cheese sandwich, you can get a burger, you can get some, so if you want to enjoy this place, you can come in and get a steak and cheese sandwich. If you're going to see a show or a movie, you can come in, get a nice cocktail, get a steak and cheese sandwich, burger, or
Yeah.
whatever you want, and then go about what your business,
And I like it too because I sat down and your bartender didn't try and hide it, right? She's like, "Oh, by the way, we have this bar menu as well."
Yeah.
Which it's like, sometimes you go to places like this and
Exactly.
they try and like,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
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 here you go.
yeah.
It's on a request, and you're like,
No. See, that's like I try to and teach our employees, like, we're here for the long term. We want our guests to be here for the long term. So let's just embrace that. Let's just give them amazing service every single night that we can. I mean, we could probably do more numbers that night, but we choose not to because we don't want it. We know what we can do, and we want to serve at the top level and give that experience to everything. And like you were saying earlier, you might not get a big check this time, but that same guy could come in the next time, enjoy with you at the bar.
yes,
And maybe get, a big T-bone or spend, triple that amount. So
and so he's a business guy, and he comes in with his friends. Hey, give us that bottle of wine, right?
Yeah.
Give us that Louis the 14th. We're celebrating.
Exactly.
Give us 4 shots of that.
Yeah.
And then they're leaving you. You just
You never know who your guests are and
Exactly.
who they are, where they're coming from. So
right. So I agree with that 100%. And then now you've opened Olivia. I know you opened a couple other concepts, but jumping to Olivia because that's your new, which we ate there last night and it was amazing.
Yeah, thank
you. The menu is really well designed. Presentation is obviously phenomenal. And again, you're not trying to like reinvent the wheel, which I love. It's not like this it's just like simplistic things done very well. And then all the pastas made in house from scratch. It's Italian concept office. All the sauces are made in house from scratch, which is huge.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So good. Rigatoni was amazing. All the apps were delicious. But the thing that stuck out to me the most was the price point. This is very reasonable.
Yeah, and that's kind of our idea. We want people to be able to enjoy our restaurants. I mean, an empty restaurant doesn't do anybody good, So I really stay focused on pricing the food accordingly, and let's get our margins that we need. Like, it's easy just to going through some of these tough times with prices of products going up so high. It's so easy just to say, oh, just add another $2 to it. But that could affect a lot of our guests and the consumer. I always tell them, well, why don't you go back to the purveyor and ask him if there's something we can do. Like, there's got to be a happy medium. You can't just raise prices. You got to be the market. And I want people to be in control of their destiny when they come into my restaurant. I want them, hey, I'm going to get a pizza and a glass of wine today, and then maybe next week they're going to get a sassafras or a big steak and really splurge. So I feel like that's good. That's how I like to eat. I like to be in control of what I want to eat and not making people just, oh, you're coming in here and you're going to spend this much money and
right. Or you're going to lead off these these 4 things if you can afford it.
Exactly. So
yeah, I agree with that. And I've seen a lot of like restaurant consultants out there, and I see that messaging all the time, and I absolutely hate it. It's like, don't be afraid to raise prices.
Yeah.
Your competition will raise prices.
Yeah.
Like, and they have all these reasons of why you should be raising prices, and I completely disagree with that. I think yes, you need to raise prices when it's necessary.
At certain times
for
you
sure.
do. Yeah.
But you're talking about closing gaps or margins or raising profit margins by increasing sales.
Exactly.
That seems like a very short-term play.
Exactly. And even like some of our specialties, we know we're going to be going through a price increase on prices. Like our, always fillets go up at holidays and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm not going to put it on to the consumer. Well, let's take the hit. Like, let's keep it at where it's at and we'll take the hit, let the consumer enjoy it, and that's my philosophy.
And I agree. And that builds trust.
Yeah.
Because when I come in and I see that the price stays the same, that's awesome. But when you have those restaurants now, some restaurants are trying to fluctuate prices, they're just outright raising prices and all this stuff. Then it becomes frustrating and then you lose trust, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think everybody knows like what a plate of pasta should cost. Everybody understands that. And when you're getting into numbers that you just like, even myself, I'm like, how are they charging? I hear it from they're charging so much down the street, blah, blah, blah. I go, well, I think we're doing okay here. Our restaurant's full. You know what I mean? So that's not that's not the, it's, you just don't do that. I just don't.
Right.
I believe in, value. I think it has to be a value.
Absolutely.
You know.
And the top restaurants in the United States and the world all are value based, right?
Absolutely.
They offer a good product or a decent products.
Yeah.
But for value, right? You're offering a great product for value, which is a
Yeah.
winning formula in my opinion, and that's their formula,
Sure.
right?
Exactly.
It's not the cheapest.
Yeah, no.
It's not the lowest quality.
Yeah.
It's a value proposition that's kind of they've got that formula.
Absolutely, because you go to a Greasy Spoon or whatever. I mean, I go to them all the time. I love them. I know I'm gonna get $9, and I know what my eggs are gonna be, and I know it's consistent every time.
Yep.
It's the consistency factor too, which is a big play on what makes a restaurant successful. Is that I think everybody finds value in that Greasy Spoon or that middle of the road restaurant or that high end restaurant. It's whether you take them on a roller coaster ride where your steak was great one time, and then the next time it's not good, and the next time it's inconsistent, and then when you start to lose the trust, like bringing it back to what you were saying, they're not coming back, and you only have so many opportunities to hold customers and guests.
Yes.
I mean, there's so many restaurants out there that you gotta, consistency is the key, and how do you recover that if it is a mistake? I mean, we're all humans, we make mistakes. There's a lot of things going on in the kitchen, and a lot of variables at service and all of that. I mean, it's a difficult job, but people are paying a price, and they need to be delivered what they're paying for.
With the way the economy is working and everything, the way it is, like the value proposition, locations are only going to be more and more sought after.
Absolutely.
And so I think like you're just ahead of the game, right? It's just going to be a matter of time before this is the formula, right? This
absolutely.
But you have to find that formula first. You have to give them still a great product with the value. That's what makes it a value.
Exactly.
You don't want to think like, well, I'm taking I'm eating the discounted food, right? Not saying the food's discounted, but it's like saying like,
exactly.
How, like, why are they like this? They could be, if you walk away, they could be charging more.
Yeah, and that's funny because in my Cafe Ponte during the lunchtime, I don't know how many people would come and say your prices are too low, and I used to say, well, my restaurant's full, and I say, it's okay. When you come in, I'll charge you more money every time if you feel better about it. But they would laugh. They would actually tell me that, and I would just say, I have a full restaurant, and we're doing well, and I want to keep it full. And a full restaurant brings a lot of energy, and
of course,
it was harder to get a reservation at lunch than dinner at my place at that time.
That was huge. Yeah, that's awesome. So we talked a lot about menu, pricing, value. One big piece of your success, and I noticed this by talking to your staff, interviewing your staff, is that a lot of people are bought in.
Yeah.
Leadership is bought in. Everyone has a good attitude. There's an excitement here, and there's a commitment here.
Yeah.
We've talked about this, but I'd love for you to talk about your philosophy behind your people.
I mean, I think you have to have a goal or a vision. The team understands where the goal is and where they're trying to go to. Because if they don't know where they're going, then I feel like, where is the vision of this thing? And they all understand the standards. Like I've always held high standards, and I've held them for myself. There's nothing that I won't do that will make this job happen. I mean, I'll bust tables. I've done dishes here. I do them, and I'll still do them here. And I think that when they see the owner and the leadership, and see the passion that I have for what I'm trying to do, I think it kind of trickles down to them, and seeing the vision and having that standard. And I think everybody wants to have excellence, and they like to put themselves around people that have excellence, and try to achieve that, and try to be like that. I always said, my brother said, if you want to be good, go play with the better players. You don't go play with the guys that aren't any good. They're only going to make you better. So I think as we bring in talented chefs, it all kind of breeds more talented people, and people have the standard and go after that. But I think a vision is definitely the key, and then also opportunity. I mean, I think it was a point where the dishwashers didn't have the next step. They wouldn't take the dishwashers to the prep. And I said, guys, we're going to constantly lose dishwashers if you don't give them a stepping stone. Every position has to have a next step where they can strive to. So the dishwasher wants to be the prep cook wants to be the lead sous chef prep, and then so on, line cook, and so on and so on. And then everybody wants to grow up, and you got to have that chain that, you pay well. I mean, I take care of your employees, and I treat them like family. I mean, people here for 20 years, and 18 years, and I think that treating them with respect but still holding fun but holding the standard. I think we create that, and we create a good, healthy environment. Everybody's looking out for each other. There's no difference between the front house and the back of the house. Like, I just remember working in restaurants where it was them against us. It was like, why? I mean, it's like, we're all trying to do the same, we're trying to achieve the same thing. And in my kitchens, I never allowed that. And, mostly because I had open kitchens too, so wouldn't go over well in the dining room anyways. I always felt like, we have to be a team so the guests get the best, experience possible in your restaurant.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said a lot of good things, like that whole ladder, the growth ladder, right?
Definitely.
Like you have to show them that to motivate them.
Yeah,
you have to stay motivated.
absolutely.
Otherwise, it becomes a mundane job.
Yeah,
and people
absolutely.
get lose passion, and then also the vision, right?
Yeah.
It's like, especially with like leadership, it's like, I always tell people, I'm like, if you tell someone go run in that direction, what do they get? They're gonna run and then they're gonna stop and go, okay, where am I running? What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
If you say go run 2 miles,
Yeah.
they'll probably hit the 2 miles,
Agreed.
no problem.
Agreed.
Right? Because you're giving them clear-cut direction.
Yeah.
Here's a goal. Here's a stop.
You got boundaries, so they
Yes.
know where they can go and where they can't go, and creating all of that. Systems too.
Systems are huge. Yeah.
I think because
100%.
systems are great because everybody knows what the expectation is. Everybody understands it. When you start to like, oh, well, why did he get to do that, or why did she get to do that? You start to create this, but we have the playbook. It's the standard. This is how we do it. It took us a long time to do it, but once you have that, everybody understands it. It's the game book. I think it makes it a lot easier for everybody.
Yeah. And then just, having that growth piece is huge. And then
Yeah.
obviously, like, I think paying them is important.
Yeah.
It can't be the main motivator, but it has to be part of it.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, we try to hire people when we hire. You want people that are passionate about hospitality. I mean,
Right.
You can see that. I think a lot of times, you can see that in the people, and that's what you're hoping for. I don't look at resumes. I say, come on in, do an stash with us, see if they have that, if they're willing to jump in or not, or they timid. You can really start to tell, how a person is in a kitchen or even in the front of the house, and see how they do that. So we like to just kind of do those stash kind of things because we want it right for them as much as we want it for them. It might not be a good fit for them. They got to see a couple of shifts and see what it's all about, and then we talk about it.
Yeah, it might not be their cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly. And
You
then
guys-
giving them the equipment. I think equipment and what they need to do the job is nothing worse than running out of glassware, running out of silver, not having the right equipment, not equipment working right. That can all really add up quickly.
Yeah, that support, right?
Yeah.
Training and then tools to have
Yeah,
the support you
yeah.
need to execute your job at a
Yeah.
high level. So I think they say with proper training and systems, I think 45% of people when they leave, they always say it's because of poor training.
Yeah.
They don't feel supported. They don't feel like
Yeah,
they were taught
exactly.
right. They felt like it made their job much tougher, much less enjoyable. 40% say it's because of leadership.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
And so it's like you guys have the leadership piece, the training piece, which
Yeah.
I love, and obviously it's just contributed to your success.
Well, thank you.
And congratulations.
And it's great having you here. I mean, you really brought a lot to the table for us.
Thank you so
Hey,
much, Chef.
my
I
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Preston, great, man.